All right, the next technique is round layers. This is actually a haircut. One of the only two that I teach you, one length and then this one. We're going to start with a mohawk right down the middle. Round layers is the same length all the way through the head. So if it's 4 inches here, it's going to be 4 inches here, 4 inches here, so on and so forth. You might also hear it's called the 90-degree haircut or uniform layers. All the same. We'll take a mohawk right down the middle. We're going to set this up a little bit differently than probably what you've seen or been taught before. Hopefully this will work. Just another way to have checkpoints and references. So I'm going to determine whatever my fringe is. I can use my comb that has numbers on it, 4, 5, 6 inches. You choose if you want to use your comb to start with. I'm just going to visualize, and I'm going to go right here. So it's about 4 inches. This haircut usually is on shorter hair. You might hear the word pixie. So round it off a little bit here, right? So that's 90 degrees. Then I come straight here. Then, as I come around the head, I follow the curve of the head. Right there's my guide. Follow it around. I'm going to stand out of your way so you can see. My guide is right there. If I need to, use my comb. It is right around 4 inches. So what I'm doing is I'm making a mohawk completely from the fringe all the way to the nape. This is going to be one of my reference points. Okay? Here's my guide. Follow it. As we get to the bend of the head, right there in the nape area, follow your line. Come right there, follow your line. Just checking my mohawk real quick. Okay, so now that I have my mohawk, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a T-zone. So I'm going to go from the apex of the head to just to the behind the ear. So what we're doing is we're going to set up 4 reference points for this haircut. So that way we have checkpoints. It's going to be easier for us to see if our haircut is even as we go through the hair. Instead of doing half and half, you get halfway through the haircut and realize that, oh, I'm way off. Now you got to start over again. Here, you get to check yourself 4 different places. And I'll show you that here in a second. So now we're going right to our middle guide, because that's where we started. Right there. Straight across, because we're at the flat part of the head. Now as I come around that corner, then I'm going to go straight down. If you have to, section the hair off. You have to figure out what works best for you. Now I'm going to go to the other part of the T-zone. So we're basically splitting the head into 4. Go to the curve of the head. That piece right there. Stand out of your way so you can see. It's just right there in that transition area, right past the apex of the ear. So now what we have is we have what we call T-zone. We have our mohawk, and then we have the apex to just behind the ear. So that's our first guide of where we're starting. Okay, now we're going to do the left side. We're going to start right back in the middle or in the front again. My reference will always be in the middle. If you want, you can start at your quadrant here and move forward, quadrant, and move back. There's a couple different ways to attack this. You have to figure out what works best for you. I'm comfortable starting in front, going to my first quadrant, checking it, then going from that quadrant and going to my second quadrant. That's how I do it. So I go front to back. You have to figure out what works best in your system. So I'm going to go right back, go right into the front hairline again like we did before. My reference will be here. Pull it slightly forward because it's the bend of the head. There's my guide. Straight across. Once I get to the curve of the head, right there at that curve, fine tooth combs the easiest. Look for that flat part and just follow it around the head. I'm not standing in a great position, but I'm standing so you can see. You see how this is flat, that it kind of does this? You want to cut where it's flat, not where it curves out. You want to cut on the flat line. Again, I would stand here. So I'd go here, and then I would go here. I'm trying to get out of your way, so my body position is not ideal, but it might be for you. Go right back to my reference. So I have a reference and a guide now. Just follow your line. Make sure you bring your guide back to your subsection. Split the guide. Bring the guide back to your subsection. We're almost at our first checkpoint. This is why I like doing it this way, is I have checkpoints. Keep it simple. Again, I always go from top to bottom. It's easy for me. Makes sense in my system, in my method. I'm right at my checkpoint, so I'm just checking my balance. Bringing my guide, keeping my lines clean. So I'm at my checkpoint here. Before I move to my next one, I'm going to make sure that my lines are moving in the right direction and that they're even. No matter how I check this, it should be even all the way through. Okay? No matter how I check it, because it's the same length all over. Now I'm going to my last quadrant. So I'm just going to walk it around, bring my guide, start in the center, work my way back. I do the same thing. It's easy, it's repeatable. That's the important thing. Again, this is a little harder to stand here, so I'm bringing the hair this way. Still looking for my guide. I can see it. Follow my guide. bring my subsection back to my guide. Cutting using only my thumb. All of my sections. Doesn't change, right? If you have a system, it doesn't change. Know where you're starting, know where you're ending. Bringing almost too much of a guide back with me. Getting rid of some of that. I don't need all that guide. Because it starts giving me a false guide. Because it's over directing too far. And then I create a problem. Again, stand in front of your work. I'm standing back here so you can see. A couple more subsections. You can see almost where I'm at now. Right there, you can see that length, right? So I'm just going to go and find that. Come right down the middle. Look for my line. Look for my guide. Right there, I can see it. Sanitize your comb. No matter how I check it, should be even. Same length everywhere. So you noticed I checked it at each quadrant, so I knew I was safe all the way around. So when I got done with the haircut, it was all good to go. So when you look at this haircut again, you can see how it looks like a round ball. Well, that's what we created. We created round layers all the way through the head. Thank you. Okay, now that we've set up the T-zone, I'm going to start on the right-hand side. See, it's our strength side. Lefties, start on your left side. We have a checkpoint. I'm going to start from the front and work to my checkpoint. Some people start from the checkpoint and work to the front. Again, because you have your T-zone guide, you can follow that. I'm going to follow it this way because it makes sense in my head. Pull it straight up. There's my guide. Follow the curve of the head. Let me get a little bit more there. Just want to make sure that I comb that forward because that's the curve of the head. This is the most difficult haircut. It's the same length all over. Makes it difficult. Take a subsection, my guide's going to follow me back. I always have a reference in the middle. That's what makes it nice, so it's harder to get lost. Flat part of the head, so it's like square layers. We take that corner, round it off. There's our guide there also. Keep that hair clean. Nice clean subsections. You can see your guide. It's easy to follow, or easier to follow. Take some of that guide, get it out of your way. You don't need it anymore. Come back, grab another guide or subsection, apologize. Pull the hair straight up. Guide's there to my reference, and then my guide's there for my previous. Follow your lines. You notice that I have a very thin subsection, so I can see my guide. Where people make the biggest mistake is they take a really big subsection and not enough guide, and then they get lost. I should be close to my reference point, which is my first checkpoint. So the great thing about doing it this way is I have 4 checkpoints. So I'm doing a quarter at a time to make sure that I'm doing it well. And if not, I only have a little bit to go back to. I'm not reinventing the wheel trying to figure out where in the heck I got lost. So that was my checkpoint. Everything worked. No matter how I pull this out, it should be even. But because I only did a quarter of it, I see my guide. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep following it. I know where I'm at. You see how short? And then I'm going to stop at my halfway point. 1 quarter at a time. It's a little bit too much. Pull the hair up, bring more guide back. So I'm bringing about 1 inch guide back. I can see my guide a lot stronger, so I have a better chance of being correct. I start at the top, I see my guide better, I have my reference there, and then I just follow it. So in this haircut, I like to go from top to bottom because I've created my mohawk there, and I can always go to that to give me a reference. Make sure you bring your guide to your subsection. Traveling guide means exactly that. This is not how I would stand to cut regular hair, or by the end of the day I need to see a masseuse. I would stand here, okay? Getting close to my middle guide. So again, it's my checkpoint number 2. Everything's falling into place. So if you look at the profile of this, you can see how it rounds over the head. No matter how I pull this out, it should be even. Okay? That's the right side.